Welcome to Proactive Physio Podcast. I am your host, Jaimin Bhatt. It's great to have you listening today. This podcast helps you to improve your clinical skills as well as your clinical outcomes. If you missed our previous podcast, visit to my website www.proactivephysioknowledge.com/podcast. You can also find a free resources regarding articles as well as research paper. So let's dive into the today's podcast. So in this podcast, I am going to tell you about the movement pattern recognition, which is very much important, and I think it is very essential for us to understand the movement part. And we must see the movement from the fundamental point of view. So the functional and dysfunctional movement pattern are rated and ranked using the screening and the evaluation process. We can focus the weakest link or a biggest limitation within the group of movement pattern by using rating and ranking information to detect difficulties within the specific movement pattern. The strength of the chain cannot be sufficiently changed by focusing on any link beside the weakest one. So let's say an example, a 400-meter relay team might consist of the 4 fastest person on the earth, yet they might struggle to pass the baton back and forth. Their stride frequency and length are outstanding and the start is excellent. They routinely fall short of the finish line or are disqualified after dropping the baton. They may have exchanging outside of the designated area or running outside of their lane while having unequal strength and grace. Would increasing their strength, speed or power be beneficial to complete the race? No, they will just fall short more quickly. The best way to improve their exchanges working the weakest link will be to make them faster. Working the weakest link allows us to study the specific after rating and ranking the various movement pattern and identify a major pattern of weakness. Even if they help to clarify the issue, elements outside of the strictest movement pattern are not ignored. Rather, they are of less significance. The ability to recognize pattern is very crucial because human brain constructs a practical perception and behavior related movement using the patterns rather than separate muscles and joint activity. When there is a pain or dysfunction, these patterns produce movement that compensate to maintain some level of function regardless of quality. They also produce harmony, efficiency and economy. This compensatory behavior, which overrides any particular information gathered at a single joint or a muscle group or any predetermined movement pattern, is a survival mechanism. The human brain is also very fond of routines. A repetitive habits develops into the patterns, and when these patterns starts to cause issue, they need to be reprogrammed. The physical components of the body are analogous to the hardware in the computer, while the motor algorithms that generate the movement pattern are analog to the software. The software on a computer does not automatically update when the hardware is changed. Yet the majority of the advantages of the new hardware cannot be fully wrapped by utilizing outdated software. Similar to how altering a body part's strength or flexibility won't improve a movement quality unless a motor programs are also addressed. So that is why we have to work on a motor point to improve the control of a joint. The main goal of the majority of older exercise and rehabilitation regimes is the attempted management of body's weak and stiff area. In this new movement science model, even if we have a good effect on stiffness and weakness as shown by isolated measures, if the movement pattern does not improve, we have not achieving anything. This does not imply that movement patterns are the only aspect of movement research, but it does suggest that they should be the first and last piece of data acquired. The illusion of progress is produced by modern technology as measurement sensitivity rises. But nothing will really change if measurement sensitivity and inventiveness in reasoning do not also increase. We require a new logistics for a mobility. Be aware that measurement is a specificity, a piece of information gathered at the behest of a logic system. A data produced by measurement are assessed and ranked using a logic framework. Although it is typical to place more emphasis on a measurements that are easiest to gather, most accessible, or with the greatest level of detail. The data acquisition should not change how important the data are. Greater degree of concentration and technical precision in measuring are frequently considered to be an improvement to the science. We must keep in mind that word focus does not mean zoom, rather it refers to the state or a characteristic that produces a simple, unambiguous definition. Anyone who can give this some serious thought will understand that we train patterns rather than piece. Patterns, not components, are what give life to yoga, martial art, kettlebell, dance, gymnastic, and an enormous range of natural movement which induced by our surroundings. The physical component of the body and its structural surrender to the pattern while stronger parts are produced by the patterns only. Parts that respond instantly are produced by patterns that rely on rapid reflexes. Parts that can be extended are produced by flexible patterns. We create a better patterns and the piece react in all the real life circumstances. The definition of functional exercise is that transfer to the several activities, and these activities build the underlying skills that underpin more specialized skills. These items need marks because they are so significant. Why shouldn't good movement pattern have signs just like healthy blood work, healthy body composition, and healthy brain waves do? In my proactive movement solution, a test designed to assess the quality of movement pattern is based on layers of fundamentals and functional movement. Gymnastics, martial arts, and yoga are examples of activities that frequently come under the strict supervision of a mentor, coach, or instructor. These moving arts are very high quality movement. Modern exercise has mainly become a quantitative endeavor, thus maintaining the quality while pursuing the quantity calls for a knowledgeable coach and trainer. In Western culture, we prioritize movement quality while ignoring movement quality. A more comprehensive results will be produced by actions that restore our equilibrium. So now let's utilize a simple movement screen every 4 months to check if our pursuit of fitness also established a function and to ensure that our pursuit of quantities maintains a minimum standard of quality as we strive to train the quantities of strength, endurance, power, and sports abilities. This is the another perfect example of how the body moves in a pattern, like squat versus leg press. The squat pattern is so different to lunge pattern. The same muscles are being used but in completely different order and requirement. You cannot leave out or miss a pattern for you risk becoming worse at the moment and even worse than that, corrupting any life activity that needs that pattern. This is what I mean by strength being a pattern specific. Another example of this being abused is in the rehabilitation field, where is so-called core exercise. These exercises are used to enhance the stability. People assume that because you can do a plank for 2 minutes, you have a great stability. But just as with the prime movers muscles, the stability muscles are pattern specific and are used differently depending on what pattern is being used. For the stabilizers to work correctly and provide great stability in a single leg squat, they need to be trained in a single leg squat. The role they play in this movement is completely different to a push-up or a plank. By the way, planks are a terrible exercise. Anyway, so don't use them if you are currently using them in your workout. It is depending on everybody's choice, but I would prefer the exercise should mimic the person's requirement or it should fulfill the person's functional goal. I find the lack of understanding for movement in today's health profession which is very frustrating. Chronic pain cases where not once has anyone tried to teach this person how to move. In rehabilitation, there is always a movement problem present. You just have to find it and then teach this person how to correct it. But before teaching any movement, you must coach the movement first. We lose certain movements because we have favored movements and so many repetitive and habitual ways of doing things in our daily life that cause a compensation at an autonomic level. So in summary, when people exercise, they are unaware of this compensation and all it needs is time for pain and injury to develop. We must understand the role of stability within pattern of movement. This is critical for the person to understand. So you can begin improving the overall strength and function of the various pattern. Thank you so much for listening this podcast. Do visit my website www.proactivephysioknowledge.com/podcast.